Hi everyone, for today's video I'm going to be talking about finishing powders, and the main reason why is because in my last video wherein I featured the Buffer Pro brush from Sonia G, I actually used a ton of finishing powders there, and it generated quite an interest, especially amongst my followers on my Instagram page. And one of the main questions that I get is like, what's the difference and which finishing powder is better from one brand to another. Now for this video, I'm not going to be talking about a versus kind of a video because it's not necessary, and I really don't like that. But I'm going to be talking about the finishing powders that I have in my collection, and maybe I'm going to also discuss the main reasons why I like using them. Now my most favorite finishing powders to use are, one, of course, the Guerlain Meteorites. I love them. This is a staple in my kit. The Candle Glow Sheer Perfecting Powders from Mercier. Very nice packaging. And of course, the finishing powders found in all of these palettes from Hourglass Cosmetics. Now, one thing I have to say though is that with my Hourglass, I do not have individual finishing powders from them, the ambient lighting powders, because I just found them to be quite expensive to purchase, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Right, but first things first, what are finishing powders? So as the name implies, finishing powders are products that you use after you have actually finished your makeup and then you have noticed that it's just too matte, there's not a lot of glow and luminosity to your skin. So using a finishing powder can just bring back the life and dimension into the face. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm just gonna apply some foundation and powder off camera, and then I'm gonna come right back. Some foundation, concealer, and powder down on my face because I think I might be doing some demos while I am talking, although I did shoot some b-rolls of me using some of the products here in front of me right now, but I'm just gonna insert it as necessary as I go along. Okay, so as I said earlier, finishing powders are powders that you use to actually bring back the glow to the skin. So in me saying that, the people who can use finishing powders either on top of makeup or by itself on top of skin are people who have dry skin, because this just makes your skin look very luminous or maybe soft focus or radiant, wherein it's not the natural state of your skin. So this is very, very helpful. Now, if you're someone who likes using a lot of matte foundations and powder foundations, and you find that your face is just too flat, using finishing powders can really help just accentuate your skin and bring back the highlights, but not overly so like a highlighter, but a much more gentle kind of a highlight that just makes your skin look very nice and fresh and not overly done. And if you have oily skin, it's also okay to use finishing powders, but just make sure that you apply it in parts of your face where you don't get oily a lot. So just be very specific, like maybe at the highest points of your cheeks, on your brow bone, or on your you can also use it to emphasize a blush if ever you're using a matte blush. So that's one way that you can use it. And also well, if you are someone who has a lot of texture on the skin, a lot of pores, try to be very light-handed or try to avoid using these types of products in general, because a lot of shine and shimmer can really accentuate the texture. So if you have textured skin, or if you have a lot of visible pores or visible lines, a matte look is actually the best look for you. Now I'm gonna talk about my finishing powders one by one, and I'm gonna discuss also the reasons why I love using it. So the first product that I have here is the Guerlain Meteorites, and this is in medium. So this is one of my go-to finishing powders that I love using. And aside from the scent, I love the finish that this Guerlain Meteorites actually leaves on my skin. And based on my observation, it actually leaves a very nice soft focus finish on the skin, which I actually love. And like, I'm just going to use this Yachiyo brush, and I'm just going to brush it lightly all over. Now, I'm not going to apply this like all over my face because I have a lot of texture here in this part. So I have my pores is showing, and also here on my nose, I have a lot of pores that's showing. So I'm just going to apply this in the outer perimeters of my face, then here on my cheekbones, and I'm just doing this all over. And as you can see, it actually delivers a very nice soft focus kind of a look, and I really love it. And it also has a radiant quality to it, like it has a hint of warmth. And when I say radiant, like if you observe here, I think I discussed this in my standalone video when I reviewed my Guerlain Meteorites collection, and I stated there that the Guerlain Meteorites actually has a hint of red on it. If you can see it here on the sponge, it has a hint of red or pinkiness. And if you look into the market and if you see a lot of products that are labeled as radiant, radiance enhancing, all of this has like a reddish tone to it and a pinky tone to it, because this just really helps in elevating your skin tone and just like removing the sallowness, the yellowness that you see on it. And because like it also mimics the way we flush normally. So if you're like being if you're moving, or if you're like blushing, this just has a nice way of like making your skin look very nice and very radiant, but you're like blushing from within. So this is what Guerlain Meteorites is known for. Now, the only thing that I have issues with the Guerlain Meteorites is that it doesn't really have a robust line of colors available for different skin tones. They only have 4, so they have, I forgot the name of the first one, I think it's Blanc. I'm just gonna flash it here on the screen anyway. So they have 4, so aside from the regular ones that we see on the permanent collection, the Claire, the medium, and the Doré or the golden meteorites, they don't really have other colors in the range that can cater to deeper skin tones. Now, although the Guerlain Meteorites only has 4 colors in their permanent collection, they release a lot of these like holiday collections, limited editions during like the spring summer season and the holiday season. And if you're someone who actually likes to have more radiance in your skin and you actually love the formula of the Guerlain Meteorites, go check those out because they have more like impact of radiance in them. They have more colors, so you can actually use those in a variety of ways. So like I have some here in my collection here at the back that I actually use as blush, some I can use as bronzers, and I just love using them. Now, the other brand that I have here that actually has not a variety, but it has a much more wider range of colors in comparison to Guerlain Meteorites is actually the Hourglass Cosmetics. Now, as I've said earlier, I don't have the individual ambient lighting finishing powders from them, but I actually use their finishing powders from their palettes. And the main reason why is because Hourglass is relatively new to me, so using palettes like this is actually a great way to get to know the product. So this is actually the finishing powder from the Ambient Lighting Edit Universe Unlocked palette, which is released over the holiday season. These two are blushes. This is a bronzer and this is a strobe light or a highlighter. So this one is called Radiant Light and this is actually a finishing powder. And you can actually purchase this as a standalone compact. So I'm just gonna insert a B-roll here of me applying Radiant Light all over my skin, so you can just see how radiant the Hourglass finishing powders actually leaves the skin. Look at that, very pretty, right? The thing that I have noticed with the hang on, let me get the other one. So this is also the other palette. This is the Lighting Edit Mini Sculpture Unlocked. So this is a finishing powder here which I actually love to use because this is perfect for a lot of skin tones that I work with here who have a lot of yellow undertones in it. And I really like using this, and this just applies a very nice, radiant finish to the skin. And I'm just applying it here in my under eye area. Even though if I said earlier that I have a lot of texture there, because this can like really emphasize that area if I just apply way too much. But I just want to show you guys the great thing about using this color. I forgot the name here. This is called Soft Light, and this just really adds a very nice soft looking diffused light in your under eye area that can make you look very nice, like, fresh and awake. And as you guys can see though, we can see that there's a difference in the intensity of the reflectivity between both products on my face. So based on my observations, the finishing powders from Hourglass actually has a much more radiant finish, while the Guerlain Meteorites has a much more soft focus kind of a finish. And it really depends on you and what kind of finish that you want on your skin and the kind of look that you're going for. So that's the main reason why I have these two brands in my collection, because they give off a very different vibe on the face. So I'm just gonna buff this out. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. As I said, the Hourglass Cosmetics actually has a much more wider range of colors that can fit a much more wider number of skin tones. Although they just relatively released the Volume 3 palette, which can cater to people who have much more deeper skin tones, even deeper than I have. So, which is actually great. And I have also noticed on their website that they have finishing powders that can cater to people who have very light skin tones. And they also have a finishing powder which has a very nice lilac-y undertone to it, which I have been quite intrigued about, because that can work really well with people who have who are very light skin tones and who have a lot of yellow undertones to it. And using that powder can actually neutralize that yellowness and just makes your skin look very nice and fresh and even. And the other brand that I actually love to use is the Candle Glow powders from Laura Mercier. So this is again a perfecting powder, and it's very, very sheer. And this product actually delivers a hint of warmth into the skin. And I think they have 5 shades in their collection, but this is just very difficult for you to get because they get sold out easily. But I have also noticed that they don't get restocked quite often. And I'm just blabbing here, by the way. So I just have a hunch, but I hope they don't pull this out of production, because this is I think a very unknown perfecting powder in the market, and it's actually very, very good. And this perfecting powder is actually not being talked about here on YouTube, or I don't see a lot of posts about it. But a lot of the makeup artists that I work with in the studio have at least 2 colors of this. So it's one of our go-to products. And what I like about this Candle Glow Sheer Perfecting Powder, it just adds a nice hint of warmth into my skin. Not in a bronzer kind of a way, but in a, the way that your skin picks up light from a burning candle. This is actually how this product actually looks like on the skin. So it's very luminous. It's not radiant like the Hourglass Cosmetics. So it's like smack in between the Guerlain Meteorites and the Hourglass Cosmetics. So it's also quite soft focus, but it's more luminous. And it just adds a nice hint of warmth onto the skin, which is actually great to use for people who have deeper skin tones or people who have skin tones like I do. Because sometimes, especially with me, when I have, when I get a tan, I cannot actually use my Guerlain Meteorites anymore because it just has a lot of, white pigments in it. And as soon as I use it and I apply it on my skin, it can make my skin look ashy. But with the Candle Glow powders from Laura Mercier, look how warm it is. It actually delivers a very nice, healthy glow into the skin. It's actually very pretty. I really hope that they do not pull this out of production. And it leaves your skin a very nice, very natural finish, but it just gives like there's something going on in your skin that it's just making your skin look very glowy and very healthy. And it's not even sun-kissed. So it's just like you're like, there's a candle in front of you at all times. So that's what I love about this product. All right, so as a review, let me just repeat myself. The Guerlain Meteorites will leave a soft focus finish on the skin. The Laura Mercier Candle Glow Sheer Perfecting Powder will leave a luminous finish on the skin. And the finishing powders from Hourglass will leave a much more radiant finish on the skin. Now, the other thing that I get asked a lot about when I use these products is that what type of brushes do I use? Now, personally, I love using my Yachiyo brushes with my Guerlain Meteorites, or like with any other finishing powders here in front of me. So it's my go-to brush. I really love it. It is actually quite dense and strong enough. I really find that I am able to break down the pearls here. As you can see, a lot of fluff is coming out, and it is able to apply a very nice finish on the skin. And because the Yachiyo brushes, they bloom to a certain degree, so they're actually able to blend it out at the same time. Now, there is actually a brush for the Guerlain Meteorites, and I did not get it because it's made of synthetics. And what I find about synthetic brushes is that it's actually a little bit painful on the skin. But it's actually a good idea to use synthetic brushes. So if you have those in your collection, you can actually use that for the Guerlain Meteorites or for the Hourglass finishing powders, even with the Candle Glow powders from Laura Mercier, because those are very, very strong and very dense, and the tips of those are actually a little bit it's not very fine, so it's actually able to break down these hard pressed powders, or these very dense powders on the pan or on the palette. Now, the other products that I like using, of course, the Buffer Pro brush from Sonia G, because I like the size of it, and I like that I'm actually able to pick up a lot of product in one go in the pan, and it's not actually causing a lot of product disturbance on the pan. You don't see it fluff out, and this just means that this brush is actually able to pick up the right amount of product, and it just helps you to shear out these products on the skin, which is actually very important, because you have to remember these finishing powders, especially these one, are still powders, and basing on how I understand the way it's formulated, it has it has cornstarch in it, and then it has some mica in it. So if you add a lot of the product on your skin, it can look cakey extremely quickly, especially if you add a lot of these products in your areas where you have a lot of texture. That just becomes very, very obvious, and it can become very cakey looking. And the other brush I also like to use is my smooth buffer brush from Sonia G, and I actually like using this for these types of palette from Hourglass, because it just fits extremely well into the pan, into the palette. And by the way, this palette is still available, but it's an online exclusive at Hourglass, so you can go and check it out. They deliver worldwide. Anyway, so back to this brush, and I feel that I can just use this if I want to apply finishing powders in very specific areas very quickly, or like here in this part, the cheeks, or even here on the middle of my the bridge of my nose. So I love this brush. Now, what other brushes do I also like to use? I love using my PF4 brush from Chikuhodo. This brush is very, very dense, and it's also quite thick, and it can just really break down the product, and it can actually pick up the product here on the brush head, and it can deliver it and also buff it out at the same time. Remember, this is a puff brush, so this can act as if you want to add more intensity and coverage with finishing powders, this is a nice brush to actually use. Now, most of the brushes that I've showed you guys, like these brushes here, and these brushes are made of goat hairs. So it's either Sokoho or Psychoho. So these are made of Psychoho. That's why they're very, very dense, because they need to be, because you know, Psychoho hair is very, very soft. So making them dense like this can make them more resilient. Now, this brush, I believe, is made of Sokoho. So it's actually like, you know, it's stiffer than the Psychoho. So it's actually able to blend out colors extremely fast, and it's also quite strong to break down the products on the pan or on the palette or on the tin. That's why I love this, because it's strong but it's also airy at the same time. So these are like my go-to brushes that I like to use. Now you can also actually use like the FO2 brush, especially if you just want to apply in your under eye area, because I know a lot of you love applying finishing powders in your under eye area. This is a good brush to use, very, very dense and very, very soft. And because this is actually quite resilient, this can actually break down the product and pick up a lot of the color from the pan. So again, just be very careful with that. Okay, let me just put this. I think I'm applying way too much finishing powders on my skin, but truthfully, guys, can you just see how very soft focus I look? And also very radiant at the same time. Oh, that's one thing, by the way. You can actually mix these brands together. Like, you know, I love mixing my Torre, my golden meteorites, the one that's a little bit deeper than the medium. And I just, if I want to make it look like, you know, I have a nice deep flush on my skin, or when I have a tan, I actually use that just to enhance my tan and to make me look more flushed. And then, you know, I can mix it in with like my Candle Glow powder from Mercier, just to diffuse it, make it look very nice and luminous without overdoing it. So you can actually mix all these finishing powders together. Oh, by the way, before I move on, if you are someone who doesn't have any of these types of like, you know, goat hair brushes in your collection, and you have sensitive skin, but you have a lot of these, like, you know, squirrel haired makeup brushes like this one, this is actually very, very soft to break down the powders, especially on, like, you know, the Guerlain Meteorites tin. What you can actually do is you can just flip the tin over and then lift the tin, and you can actually see that we have some powder here on the tin, and you can use your squirrel haired makeup brush, and you can use this to apply the finishing powder all over your skin. Okay, so that's the thing. But with the, you know, the hard pressed powders on the Hourglass and on the Mercier, you actually need a much more stiffer brush for that. Now I think Hourglass and Mercier has their own brushes that you can actually use in tandem with their products. Before I let you go, I'm just gonna discuss briefly like, you know, the price point of these products. Now I do have to say the Guerlain Meteorites is a little bit expensive, because here in the Philippines, this sells for 3,400 pesos. Now, the Hourglass Cosmetics ambient lighting finishing powders actually sell for 3,300 pesos. So there's only a 100 peso difference between these two. But one thing I do have to say though is that you actually get 25 grams of product in one tin of the Guerlain Meteorites, while on, like, you know, the standalone compact or the finishing powders from Hourglass, you only get 10 grams of product. Now the cheapest amongst the finishing powders that I have in my collection is the Mercier Candle Glow Sheer Perfecting Powder, and here in the Philippines this retails for, I have a cheat sheet here, 2,150 pesos. So but then again, you only get 8 grams of products with these. So again, as I've said before, like, you know, choosing one finishing powder from another or one product from another depends on your buying power, depends on how much, there's a fly, depends on how much you are willing to spend for a particular product, and, like, you know, which brand actually calls out to you and which brand you actually believe in. Alright, so that's it for me today. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any more questions about how I use my finishing powders, leave them down in the comments box and let's have a conversation about it. And also one other thing, everything that I used on my face today, I'm going to put down in the description box so that you can go and check them out. Alright, so that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here. And I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye!